Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Throne of Seal based on novel. So let's start. Spiritual pellet. That golden ball was really Chen Zidian's spiritual pellet. He wouldn't easily display the use of his domain for fear of affecting the other people in the stadium, so he could only make use of his spiritual pellet to stabilize the defense of the stadium. Inside the stadium, Long Haochen and the divine unicorn immediately got expelled by the effects of that star's explosion. Floating in midair, Long Haochen let out a splurt of blood, his light god domain narrowly shattered in a violent shaking. This explosive force is really so terrifying. Is that the power of a domain technique? Long Haochen's internal spiritual energy totaled 290,000, adding to that the amplification from his golden foundation armor and the divine unicorn. His total available spiritual energy was already over 400,000. Although he hadn't reached the 4th rank of 9th step, the spiritual energy he could bring into play was no less. But in front of these explosions, his 7 apertures felt as if sealed, causing the terrible feeling of having his senses stripped. Not only his body, but even his soul experienced the large shaking. Was Starry Sky explosion such a terrible thing? The current Long Haochen was full of deep shock. Never did he expect Yang Haoyu's domain to actually reach such a terrible level of power. Because he was unfamiliar with the opponent, and because Yang Hao was also a powerhouse of the Night Temple, so far Long Haochen had maintained a probing attitude in this battle. This was also why he chose to take the first blow of the star domain with the divine snail shield instead of meeting it with his domain's power. And, right now, he got a true view of the terrible level of strength the domain ability could reach. The actual terror of a domain ability's destructive power was far above a forbidden spell. If the barrier specially prepared for defending Alliance's great stadium wasn't there earlier, they could be afraid a calamity would have befallen the whole holy city. However, Long Haochen was not discouraged so simply. Quite the opposite, something seemed to awaken in his body in front of this massive pressure. Taking a deep breath and stabilizing his body and staring at Yang Haoyu, Long Haochen did not wipe the blood on the corners of his mouth, and his look became even more calm than before. The light god domain once again retracting to an area of 10 meters diameter around him, Long Haochen took a deep breath, seemingly drawing all the light into his body. The 2 swords in his hand were slowly brought together above his head, and when the 2 divine swords flowed into each other, a terrible flash of white light surged out from them. Immediately, that white light turned multicolored, before turning into an incandescent white. The 2 swords' harmonious bond drew in a power that had initially even caused the demon god emperor to sigh in admiration. But this harmonious use of the 2 swords seemed to be only aiming at controlling his light god domain. A fantastic white luster surged out from the 2 swords that had been made one with the light god domain. At that time, Yang Haoyu had a look of shock for the first time, seeing the bearing of Long Haochen's light god domain change. Every domain had its own bearing. For instance, Yang Haoyu's star domain had a mysterious and inexhaustible bearing. But Long Haochen's light god domain's original bearing seemed boundless, a boundless light, purity, and gentleness. But right now, a fantastic change occurred on the light god domain's bearing. It turned white from a golden color, an incandescent color that returned to gentleness after an initial surge of brutal power, a vast aura of familiarity. That was life and creation. Right. When Long Haochen relied on the 2 swords' harmonious bond, it triggered a kind of evolution of his light god domain. The white domain was beaming with feelings of life and creation. This was the powerful aura of life and creation coming from the fusion between light and water, raising the natural qualities of the light DoD domain by 100-fold, and its bearing by 1,000-fold at once. Life and creation, a new mystery behind light god domain. Long Haochen's eyes similarly turned into an incandescent color, as he held the sword of life and creation in his hand, the light god domain extending once again immediately. Where it passed, the star domain was unable to resist, making a losing retreat little by little. With a wave of Yang Haoyu's right hand, this time 2 stars came flying at Long Haochen. If these 2 stars were to detonate, the resulting might was bound to increase by several-fold. White light circulated freely, as Long Haochen's light god domain suddenly slowed its spiraling speed. Surges after surges of light extended, immediately forming 2 bands in front of the 2 concentrations of starlight, slowly making way inside the 2 stos. Then Yang Haoyu immediately found out that he had lost control of his own domain. The starry sky explosion technique would immediately blow up upon contact with an opposing force, blowing at the core spot of the opponent's force. Triggering the explosion ahead of time was impossible, as at that time, the star was still located in its star domain, that would be akin to attacking himself. But when the star made contact with Long Houchen's light god domain, he unexpectedly lost control, becoming unable to explode it. In other words, Long Houchen had neutralized his starry sky explosion technique. This instant, Yang Haoyu's eyes were full of shock. He did not expect at all that Long Houchen's evolved domain would actually neutralize his domain technique like that. Long Houchen had a different cultivating orientation than Caia. Her method was more inclined to developing her domain technique, because what she inherited was the power of purification of the death god, hence her domain technique would to a large extent increase her offensive strength. After Long Houchen fused with Elux's constitution as a sign of light, his whole being was turned into a part of the light element. The mysteries of light did not relate to slaughters and battle, but with the creation and life brought by light. Because of finding out its true essence, Long Houchen chose this path for himself, the path leading to his domain's evolution. Right now, he was making use of the second form of the light god domain, its evolved form. Life and creations were inevitable and incidental concepts involved in everything. The fantastic changes and connection between these inevitable and incidental things caused the rise of a new ability exceeding the scope of light. The starry sky explosion was certainly powerful and impossible for Long Houchen to block, but through his evolved light god domain, he had the ability to break off this power, and even cause the star domain to fall apart under the effects of the laws of life and creation. Yang Haoyu knew that he had been underestimating this youngster. The latter's understanding of his own domain was perhaps not deep enough yet, but that was still an earth-shattering talent, whose knowledge of light vastly surpassed his own. And right now, this knowledge integrated his domain, thus causing it to complete an evolution. Yang Haoyu's eyes were filled with admiration. He understood that given enough time, this youngster would surely come to surpass him. What a power of life and creation! Then let me show you the last struggle of my domain. Speaking so, Yang Haoyu slowly lifted his right arm, pointing it to the sky. For the first time, his star domain shrank, but kept dispersing stars in the whole process. Long Houchen's light god domain consequently expanded immediately to a great extent. Because even mere dispersed stars could still inflict massive damage to him, his only option was to slowly neutralize these stars' power. From the shrinking domains, a lot of stars gathered on Yang Haoyu. His golden armor was originally very gorgeous, but after the stars were inlaid on it one after another, it gained an incomparable brightness. Self-incarnating domain. Li Jingji lost his voice in alarm, full of shock, followed by a decrepit look on his face. He knew that a hardly closable gap still existed between Yang Haoyu and him. Li Jingji put his greatest hopes on this temple's great gathering, because he had just broken through the 4th rank of the 9th step of cultivation, his internal spiritual energy exceeding 400,000. Not only that, but he had furthermore 2 powerful domain techniques. But after seeing the ability Yang Haoyu displayed, he knew that the unsurpassable gap separating him from this legendary starry sky holy knight was still present. Self-incarnating domain, that was a characteristic ability of the 5th rank from the 9th step, representative of the upgrade to a high-class powerhouse of the 9th step. At this moment, the domain was Yang Haoyu himself, and Yang Haoyu was also his own domain, the domain and its wielder becoming a single entity. This was already a boundary of immortality. Of course, this was not a real immortality, but upon reaching the realm of self-incarnating domain, a human powerhouse's life expectancy would expand to over 500 years. Chen Zidian didn't manage to accomplish this feat, yet Yang Haoyu just did. Long Houchen's light god domain gradually covered Yang Haoyu in its scope, and Yang Haoyu displayed a thin smile on his face. His domain having completely merged with him, this had become a fight inside Long Houchen's light god domain. Waving his swords, Yang Haoyu immediately took the path in front of him. Even the already evolved light god domain was split in front of his swords, which had gained transparency, flickered with starlight, just like his armor, embodying the endless night sky. A bizarre crossed starlight sword strike lacerated the way toward Long Houchen, totally unstoppable by the light god domain. The starlight cross sword strike traveled at very slow speed, but its huge pressure caused Long Houchen's golden foundation armor to issue a series of crackling sounds, with countless cracks starting to show up on the golden foundation armor. This armor of epic tier was actually completely unable to bear such a level of might. The divine unicorn extended its wings, revealing a pained look. Under that huge pressure, its head was lowered forcefully, and the sacred light dispersed from its horn became far weaker. This divine unicorn was, of course, Star King, who evolved along with the rise of Long Houchen's cultivation. It still did not have its own domain, and its uses had been minimized due to the star domain's suppression. Yang Haoyu's strike already made use of most of his domain, compressed to be used in the shape of a technique. This crossed swords strike could be said to accumulate the power of multitudinous starry sky explosion techniques. Even the light god domain evolved to the boundary of life and creation couldn't possibly dispel such a highly concentrated domain's power. This was the gap in the two parties' cultivation, already going beyond the gap in the two domains' qualities. With light tingling sounds, Long Houchen instantly chose to discard his own golden foundation armor, turning it back into a golden foundation box dropping down, otherwise it would sustain irreparable damage. Without the armor's protection, Long Houchen's situation of crisis became even more pronounced. The huge might made him unable to even let go of the sword of life and creation in his hands. This was the true might of the Starry Sky Knight. One could say that the process of the previous course of the battle was simply Yang Haoyu giving direction to Long Houchen for the sake of increasing his experience of resisting powerhouses. Yang Haoyu's starlight cross-strike was faster than anything else, striking straight at Long Houchen, but the attack speed was voluntarily lowered rapidly, as the pressure was increased. With the increase in pressure, the rebound would get just as much stronger. With Long Houchen's cultivation, bearing such a pressure would hardly be possible. Yang Haoyu was trying to force out breakthroughs from Long Houchen with the most of his own strength. Such a practical experience would yield indescribable benefits for his future. Long Houchen's body was shivering slightly in the air in front of this devastating pressure, as the harmonious sword of life and creation dispersed dragon-like chants that only kept getting more and more high-pitched. The starlight cross-strike was getting nearer and nearer to Long Houchen, and he was still unable to come out with an effective response, much less any shift of movement. Yang Haoyu sighed secretly, thinking to himself, maybe I just held overly high expectations on this child. He is not even 30, yet he already managed to evolve his domain once. What more is there to insist for him to display? The huge pressure started to cause Long Houchen's mouth and nose to splurt blood. If this kept going on, his life would soon get endangered. Right as Yang Haoyu was thinking about terminating his attack, he suddenly caught sight of Long Houchen's eyes. These eyes were just as limpid, with the same peaceful look even under such desperate straits, with even a look of persistence coupled to this gentle expression. He hasn't given up. This was Yang Haoyu's first reaction, and right at this time, he saw a purple glint in his eyes, as a purplish golden luster emanated from within his eyes. 9 purple lines showed up noiselessly on his forehead. Just like torrential waves, purplish golden halations gushed out from Long Houchen's back, instantly turning the white light god domain a purplish golden color. The aura of life and creation disappeared, to be replaced by an incomparable might, an inexhaustible destructive intent. That instant, Long Houchen's aura metamorphosed, the only thing remaining the same being his soft and peaceful look. A huge illusory figure appeared behind him. That was not the goddess of light, as after absorbing Elux's special qualities as sign of light, he was not able to make use of God's descent any longer. That was because his spiritual energy reached the quality of a light god, an existence able to contend with the goddess of light. This huge illusory image was purple-colored, letting out resplendent purple, its 6 immense heads lifted high, with 2 huge bulges on the extreme sides of the 6 heads, already close to the shape of the other 6 heads. The illusory look of that stature gradually gained in substance, its huge wings unfolding and causing the addition of an incomparable nobility and might to Long Houchen's purplish godlight god domain. Right, his blood vessels had called him out in front of the high pressure and life-threatening crisis confronting Long Houchen. ROA. An overwhelming roar resounded behind Long Houchen. The deep traces of purple intent flared up, turning into a purple halation blowing at Yang Haoyu. Astonishingly, everywhere the purple light passed, Long Houchen's surroundings turned purplish golden color, and that starlight crow's strike came to a stop in midair. One could shockingly see that purplish light extend on the path taken by Yang Haoyu, annihilating an innumerable starlight on its way. Yang Haoyu's swords changed stance, its starlight interweaving into a magnificent star atlas. But all this starlight seemed completely useless in front of that purplish golden halation when dispersed directly. When that purplish light made contact with Yang Haoyu, his body shivered violently, and an illusory golden cloud separated from him, fluttering toward the opposite direction. The sword of life and creation in Long Houchen's hands finally landed, greatly reducing the might of the starlight sword cross-strike, and in the midst of resonating clinging sounds, the crossed swords were split. Long Houchen took advantage of the great momentum to flash forward, the massive image on his back merging with him to turn into a magnificent purplish-golden armor. But this purplish-gold color was far too overbearing. At the time it stuck onto Long Houchen's body, the divine unicorn was actually expelled far away. How strange to see the divine unicorn not show the slightest resistance at such a time. The multicolored hexagram traced under its feet disappeared quietly, and if one paid careful attention, he would find out that at the time that massive purple figure appeared, even the top-tier divine unicorn looked filled with terror. To the opposite of Long Houchen's magnificent purplish-golden armor, Yang Haoyu's starry sky armor and dual swords actually both disappeared. That previous sound of roaring accompanied with the release of a purple halation actually forcefully cut his contact with the starry sky mythological beast. Yang Haoyu was completely filled with shock right now. A second evolution. That was actually a second evolution that took place in his domain. This was impossible. Even a powerhouse of the 9th step, 5th rank, such as himself couldn't accomplish this feat. Only at the 6th or even 7th rank could that possibly be done. He also felt the sense of his companion. That purple halation unexpectedly aroused fear in the starry sky mythological beast known to be the number 1 mythological beast of the starry sky type. Ever since he made a pact with the starry sky mythological beast, it was a first for this to happen to Yang Haoyu. From the start of this battle, Long Houchen was constantly under pressure. The pressure being abruptly lightened, he reflexively took advantage of the momentum to launch an attack. Right now, the light god domain was in an extraordinary state, but that was actually not a second evolution. Just like the armor materialized on Long Houchen's body, that came from Haoyu's power. That 6-headed purple figure was no one else but Haoyu, who had nearly died alongside Long Houchen, and had gone into hiding for over 5 years. That deep purple halation was Haoyu's bloodline power. Just like Long Houchen's cultivation rose to the 2nd rank of the 9th step, Haoyu also made considerable progress, greatly gaining in volume to now be over 30 meters long. All his scales were like glistening amethysts, but actually, his cultivation only reached the peak of the 8th step. But, assessing Haoyu could naturally not be done with such simple factors alone. Those 2 huge bulges seemed to possibly be about to form heads at any time. The 6-headed Haoyu already reaching the peak of the 8th step. If he were to grow 2 more heads to gain 8 heads, just what level would he reach? Even Long Houchen himself did not dare imagine. Also, because Haoyu's latent capabilities only kept growing stronger and stronger, Long Houchen's curiosity regarding his origins only kept growing. Assimilating Haoyu's blood force, Long Houchen also felt a spurt of the power coming from Haoyu's blood force into his own body too. The light god domain, which was ordinarily gentle, gained nobility and might. To life and creations were added ounces of devastation and destruction. These 2 extremes coming out from Haoyu's powerful blood vessels integrated the whole perfectly. Haoyu was certainly not as powerful as Long Houchen right now, but the level reached by his blood vessel's power was not even bearable for the starry sky mythological beast, which separated itself from Yang Haoyu's body, causing Yang Haoyu's star domain to lose balance immediately. In the midst of this disturbance, Long Houchen's attack raised to its strongest degree of strength. The heart of eternity pulsed vigorously, and the purplish gold-colored divine swords released an unprecedented luster, filled with domineering sword intent and also carrying a purplish golden glint while elevated high. This instant, his sword's soul and sword intent made one, and caused Long Houchen to instantly arise to his peak state. However, Yang Haoyu did deserve his reputation after all. The starry sky mythological beast separated from him only for a split second before returning to cover his body. But the star domain was weakened slightly, while Long Houchen's agile attack carried an earth-shattering power. With a shout, the swords in his hand traced an abstruse arc, gathering myriad starlights as one to clash with Long Houchen's powerful strike. This clash looked unimportant, but in the Night Temple's lounge, it caused great changes in the expression on Chen Zidian's face. His figure flashed to reach the top of the defensive barrier, and he shouted loudly, "Full power to support the barrier, everyone." Those 2's blows sprang up to the barrier. This clash contained the full power of the 2 of them, already exceeding the level of normal domains. They seemed to have actually forgotten that this was a match taking place in the temple's great gathering. A clash reaching their level was already beyond what the divine tool-level defensive barrier could sustain. And in case it shattered, perhaps the whole holy city would get affected, especially the numerous crowd standing outside. A real blast out would really turn this match into an unprecedented calamity. Chen Zidian did not stop them all this time, because he was very familiar with Yang Haoyu, hence fully aware of the height of his cultivation, knowing that he's a really proper person. But who could guess that Long Haochen would suddenly summon another magical beast, before uniting with him and actually severing the link between Yang Haoyu and the Starry Sky mythological beast. This inflamed Yang Haoyu's competitiveness, resulting in this clash of maximal power. If it were let to burst out, even among the higher-ups from the 6 great temples, perhaps only a few of those inferior to the 9th step would remain. Being the chief referee, how could he let such a situation take place? His first reaction was to immediately asking for help, as the defensive barrier was their only means to unite their strengths at once. Hearing Chen Zidian's large shout, the higher-ups from the 6 great temples almost all set into action with no hesitation. Li Jingji was the first one to react, pressing both his hands onto the barrier to pour his spiritual energy inside. This barrier was extremely mystical. Aside from pouring spiritual energy inside through the magic array, it was also possible to pour it inside directly. However, it would just not have the same amplifying effects as through the array. The temple's great gathering was a contest between the greatest powerhouses of the temple alliances, where all kinds of accidents had already occurred. Such a defensive barrier strengthening had been formally employed in earlier temples' great gathering. For instance, the sign of samsara of the past had narrowly caused it to get totally torn to shreds. Although the defensive barrier of the temple's great stadium covered a very large area, the manpower to sustain it was also enormous. Right now, the collaboration of all powerhouses from the 6 great temple instantly strengthened it to an enormous degree. An earthquake-like shaking immediately broke out. The area within was already filled with a myriad of flowing lights of every color. Long Haochen and Yang Haoyu's figures were completely submerged in that magnificent light, and the massive shaking was already implicating the whole holy city, just like a real earthquake. The defensive barrier could sustain severe blows, because the ones sustaining it had come flying from all the lounges, reaching at least the 8th step of cultivation. Yet they were sent flying one after another by the huge shock. The whole barrier flickered in multicolored light. Everyone could sense a terrifying might surging inside the barrier. Letting it burst out would cause devastating damage to spread. The defensive barrier could resist the shocks from spiritual energy, but no one was able to cover the surface underneath it. So right now, it started to split from below, causing the whole temple's great stadium to sway violently, some cracks starting to form on its floor. Right this time, a multicolored golden light instantly came in midair. As that golden light gained in scale, it covered the whole floor of the Alliance's great stadium, before slowly spreading downwards to start to cover the whole great stadium. The shaking of Holy City stopped at last, but because of the substantial damage caused by this light, the roof disappeared totally. That was a pagoda, flickering in golden light spilling all over the air. On this pagoda were countless golden inscriptions, letting out lustres of various colors. That 7-floored pagoda seemed just large enough to cover the surface of the Alliance's great stadium, as well as the whole defensive barrier. The instant it landed onto the ground, the earthquake-like shocks were finally contained. Everyone outside of the Alliance's great stadium was already in a great panic. Every broadcasting magical crystal had been broken into pieces, and the masses were filled with shocking terror. Fortunately, that terrifying earth-shaking, as if a mighty dragon rolled over, disappeared after only continuing for a very short time. Seeing the immense tower that had risen up in the midst of that split Alliance's great stadium, gasped shouts arose immediately from the people. Kia calmly remained afloat, stretching her right hand in front of her with her palm spread out. This crushing presence in the midst of the stadium was with no doubt the Tower of Eternity. The current Tower of Eternity was completely different from before. It seemed much less mystical, appearing closer to a genuine divine tool. Although it didn't reach the level of a supra-divine tool, it had a space-shuttling ability, and moreover, an exceeding defensive power. Before the holy necromancer Elux got purified, it had already acknowledged Kia as a master, acting right now as an attacker and defender with a spatial teleporting ability at Kia's disposal. The Tower of Eternity issued light chirping sounds, which lasted for a long time, before gradually calming down. A bright light flashed out from Kia's chest, as her right hand was waved at the Tower of Eternity. The Tower of Eternity flew 20 meters upwards, before shrinking rapidly, landing back in Cai's hands, to finally turn into an intricate golden jewel 25 centimeters long, returning to her palm. Kia lifted her wrist, the eternal melody flashing on her waist, as the Tower of Eternity disappeared without traces into the shape of countless strands of light, and her gaze shifted impatiently back to the direction of the stadium. Right now, the stadium had already recovered its calm. No damage was sustained by the barrier in the end, and the higher-ups from the Sixth Great Temple with the duty of maintaining the barrier gathered back one by one, with a lot of people looking at Kia. Without the previous suppression by the Tower of Eternity, although it wouldn't have gone to the extent of Holy City getting really endangered, that situation, like a dragon attack, would certainly have caused a massive disorder to arise in Holy City. The ground of the stadium seemed plowed. The whole ground was dug up with Long Houchen and Yang Haoyu standing on the only two intact pieces of land. Long Houchen fell onto the ground, using his two heavy swords to support his body, looking quite pale, and having traces of blood flow in the corner of his mouth. But one could clearly see a powerful bright light shining on his chest, indicator of the pulse of the heart of eternity recuperating a large amount of light essence. Although Yang Haoyu was still floating, he looked quite wretched, his hair being in complete disorder and the starry sky armor on him having already disappeared. Chen Zidian was gasping for breath. For the sake of maintaining the defensive barrier, he had just expended too much. The two of them couldn't help but gasp in silence when looking at the same direction. I have lost. Long Houchen and Yang Haoyu looked at each other, declaring this stance almost simultaneously. Chen Zidian had a questioning look. Without leaving the time for Long Houchen to explain himself, Yang Haoyu declared, I had a slight advantage in the previous clash, but your spiritual energy recovery speed is far greater than mine, and you can moreover summon the divine unicorn back to support you for the rest of the battle. The probabilities of you winning are far greater. No need to say more, I am conceding. After saying this, his figure flashed out as he took the leave to walk out through the defensive barrier. Long Houchen looked full of appreciation. He knew that Yang Haoyu was acting on purpose. He was actually the losing side. His latent capabilities were completely squeezed out by Yang Haoyu. If Yang Haoyu had been attacking with all his power from the start, he would have lost long ago. Even the last clashes were actually at Yang Haoyu's advantage. Even if he were to really attempt killing the opponent, Long Houchen would still only be at most able to inflict him some serious wounds. Thanks to the Heart of Eternity, Long Houchen recovered his spiritual energy at an even faster speed than Yang Haoyu. But what use was there in that if Yang Haoyu were to not let him have the time to recover? The gap in strength between Long Houchen and Yang Haoyu was still considerable. However, this battle brought him especially huge benefits. In particular, he was given an important lesson regarding a domain's uses. Yang Haoyu had conceded for the sake of helping him carry out his plan. Very obviously, Long Chenying had already informed him, this number one powerhouse of the Night Temple, about Long Houchen's plan. Chen Zidian's look was filled with gratification and pleasant surprise, as he nodded to Long Houchen. Then, Long Houchen is victorious and advances to the fourth round. Since the stadium has sustained a massive destruction, today's matches are to be paused for the field to immediately be restored, and the competition will resume tomorrow in the morning. If Long Houchen's battle with Chiu Yonghao could be said to make him the focal point of attention, his battle with Yang Haoyu gave him famed accomplishment. That was a match opposing domains, opposing domain evolution with domain technique, and opposing the two magical beast companions. Although no one got to clearly see the last clashes, Long Houchen had already displayed his power to the whole audience. This 25-year-old youngster had convinced them all with his strength. Bright glimmer of hope would also be regarded just like the other 6 great temples from that point onward. Walking out from the barrier's scope, Long Houchen caught up with Yang Haoyu using large strides, bowing to him respectfully, Grandpa Yang, thank you for your help. Yang Haoyu smiled to him, it is not that I helped you, but you just made it off on your own. My original intention was to cut off your drive on the basis that failure is the mother of success, so that you could look for your own shortcomings after suffering a blatant defeat. But, you managed to reverse my thinking by relying on your strength. You are the most talented youngster I have ever seen, yet you are showing a great steadiness and experience unfit to your age. I am leaving the Night Temple, as well as the whole alliance to you. The old guys such as us will be supporting you on the side, so you can be at ease. I can really see humanity's emergence by looking at you, and the possibility of overcoming this dark age. If you have nothing else to do, come with me. I have some things to discuss with you. Yes, Grandpa Yang. Long Houchen accepted hastily, Long Chenying patting his shoulders, as he performed another standard night salute to Yang Haoyu. Although the Alliance's great gathering had been interrupted in great chaos, it had more than enough manpower involved to take care of the exterior damage, while numerous artisans of the Alliance were assigned to the repairs in shifts. Yang Haoyu quietly led Long Houchen out from the stadium. With their cultivation, remaining unnoticed couldn't be easier. Without proceeding to the Alliance's headquarters, Yang Haoyu brought Long Haochen to a familiar place, the Demon Hunt Squad's pagoda tower. Due to the temple's great gathering, this place was completely empty. Recognizing Yang Haoyu, the staff did not even utter a question, and left him to proceed to the top floor of the tower. Under Yang Haoyu's lead, Long Haochen proceeded with him to the 7th floor of the tower, somewhere he hadn't ever gone before. The 6th floor was used for the Demon Hunt Squad's mission announcements, and this 7th floor was a place only titled Demon Hunt Squads were qualified to access for taking missions. Although Long Haochen was already the captain of a titled Demon Hunt Squad, it was the first time he had come here. Upon arriving, he discovered with great surprise another person waiting for them in this 7th floor. "Senior Chen, you are here too?" Long Haochen asked him, pleasantly surprised to see the legendary chief referee of the temple's great gathering, Chen Zidian. Chen Zidian let out a laugh. "Old pal Yang has been throwing flirtatious winks at me before leaving. How could I not come?" Yang Haoyu replied unhappily, "How could you be so lacking of dignity when you are already so old, old Chen? Pay attention to your words in front of a youngster." Chen Zidian laughed, "What do you want me to pay attention to? I am just like that. Or, based on that, you should call me great ancestor in terms of seniority." "Wow, Haochen. Your performance gave me a whole new level of respect for you today." Long Haochen's face flushed. "Actually, I have lost. Grandpa Yang just let me win on purpose. There's still a great gap between Grandpa Yang and me." Chen Zidian shook his head. "Don't be tense because of the gap. It's okay as long as you have the potential. You are really an unprecedented case in history. Old Yang, you agree with me?" Yang Haoyu nodded. "I have never encountered such a genius as this child. I am even feeling jealous of him." Chen Zidian responded, "Seeing your battle, I couldn't help but think back about 10 years ago. Do you know, old pal Yang, it was 10 years ago that I met this guy Haochen for the first time. He was only about 15, but I found out about his gifts at that time. I told him that they should give their best to take over my legacy, to inherit the title of the Demon God Slayers." Yang Haoyu couldn't help but feel submerged with emotions as well. "Good eyesight." Chen Zidian chuckled. "I have always believed that we Demon God Slayers were rather famous, but do you know how this guy replied to me?" Yang Haoyu had a puzzled look. Could it be that he refused? Chen Zidian continued with a laughing face. "Of course he refused. He told me that if they could really one day become a titled Demon Hunt Squad, they did not want to get called Demon God Slayers, but Bright Glimmer of Hope. I have lived for over 300 years, but never expected to one day be shocked by a 15-year-old kid. I was brimming with shock that day, and the same went for my comrades. Glimmer of Hope, what a well-found game. To bring humanity a glimpse of hope in the midst of darkness. I haven't seen any of what they experienced in those 10 years, but I can see that all of it has borne fruit. At first, our lives should have come to their end 5 years ago, as a human cannot go against his fate. But with the start of that holy war, we were left with no choice but to keep ourselves alive through secret means, and after 5 more years passed, I can finally see hope, qualified successors, truly qualified successors." In fact, Chen Zidian had been following Long Haochen's group's return from demon territory. Speaking of which, it was truly the terrible will of heaven that they had initially fallen for the trap of the Demon God Emperor. The Demon God Slayers' Demon Hunt Squad had been concealed in Modu Core City all along. And, that year, Long Haochen's group having pulled such a large move in Core City, if the Demon God Slayers were present, they would surely have immediately come to their rescue. But when Long Haochen's group was coming in, the Demon God Slayers had happened to be running into the end of their lives. So the team provisionally had to withdraw from Modu to look for a secret underground to use the secret means to prolong their lives. Chen Zidian's group had already been living for over 300 years, having spent an even greater part of their lives in demon territory compared to the Temple Alliance. They actually had nothing much keeping them alive since long ago, but during that holy war, they couldn't bear to leave like that. If nothing was left to restrict the Demon God Emperor, humankind was bound to encounter a massive calamity. After Long Haochen's grew up terminated their seclusion in the Tower of Eternity, Long Haochen had been looking for Yuyi, thinking of getting news from her, but her residence in the Moon Demon clan was already empty, devoid of any traces of living. Afterwards, Long Haochen used the contact signal of Demon Hunt Squad in Modu Core City, not expecting to get hold of Chen Zidian, leader of the Demon God Slayers. And there, Long Haochen learnt about the many changes that occurred on the continent during these past years, as well as obtaining news about the temple's great gathering on the verge of being convened. Chen Zidian had followed Long Haochen's group back, and had given advice for Long Haochen to decide after discussion that they should directly participate in the temple's great gathering with only one goal: to put an end to the current scattered state of the Temple Alliance. Hearing Chen Zidian speak about nearing the end of his life, Long Haochen's expression darkened unconsciously, lowering his head in silence. Yang Haoyu responded smilingly, "No need to feel that way, Haochen. If you can show the hope of breaking out from the dark era before old Chen departs, I believe that he will be able to leave with a smile." Chen Zidian nodded with a beaming look. "Exactly. Old Yang, you must have called out this youngster here for some purpose. Speak straight." Yang Haoyu replied, "Originally, when Chen Ying mentioned about having him take over the lead of the Temple Alliance, and that the time had come to establish a whole new alliance, I was still skeptical. But in today's match, he persuaded me with strength, and I have decided to support him wholeheartedly. The alliance had been dispersed for far too long, but with the end of the Holy War finally came the best turning point. I believed that all other temples clearly witnessed today's match. Old Chen, do you think we should end the temple's great gathering ahead of time to avoid wasting more time?" Chen Zidian shook his head. "It won't do. The temple's great gathering is no trifling matter. And to these youngsters, it's also a significant experience. Let's rather keep the competition going. Or could it be that you don't believe in Haochen? Even if he cannot defeat Li Jingji in a 1 versus 1, I am very confident in their results in the next team competitions." Yang Haoyu declared, "In that case, let's keep it going. Haochen, I have actually called you here today to warn you about another matter. Please, do tell." Long Haochen replied respectfully. Yang Haoyu declared, "Establishing a new alliance is a must, and our objective this time is to establish an alliance with a highly centralized state power. You may even call it a nation. Your current strength is already sufficient, but you are still lacking an important thing. A divine throne." Hearing about divine throne, Long Haochen couldn't refrain from shaking. He still remembered vividly the first time he witnessed in shock the use of a divine throne by his father. The divine throne of doom and slaughter had left him a just too deep impression, giving him at that time a longing for becoming a divine knight one day. Part 1 end here.